My name is Warrant Officer Ted McLeod. I curate the Museum for the Lord Strathcona's Horse Royal Canadians. Today we'll look at some of the displays that are encompassed in this gallery. The regiment itself was formed as a privately raised regiment in 1900 for the Boer War. Donald Smith, Lord Strathcona, pulled the money out of his pocket, provided it to the Canadian government to build a mounted unit, a mounted infantry unit. It was recruited throughout the West in Canada by region. Guys were recruited from small towns and larger towns throughout the West. They were kept in those groups that they were recruited in. They formed in Ottawa, and then the unit itself, at about 560 men, was shipped overseas to South Africa to fight in the Boer War for a year. The Strathconas are the only Canadian armour unit that can claim to have fought in all of Canada's foreign wars. Certainly we fought in the Boer War, World War I, World War II. World War II is the beginning of the tank phase, but we also fought in Korea. There's no other armour unit that can claim to have fought in Korea. And we carried the tank tradition, skills, and combat ability right through into Afghanistan. The large proportion of tank deployments were Strathconas. They were back to back to back, right to the very last one when we were replaced by the 12 RBC. But before that, every tank deployment into Afghanistan was a Strathcona squadron. Certainly not without augmentation. We couldn't have done it just by ourselves. There aren't enough. But with augmentation from other units, our unit was the one that provided every tank squadron, save one. We do three-dimensional, full-scale dioramas, including this one. The Ferret Scout car is real. It's one of the ones that served in the 60s and 70s. We have full-scale tanks and mannequins carrying out different activities that demonstrate the history that we're talking about. These particular pennants are reproduction pennants of the ones presented by the Ladies Auxiliary in Ottawa prior to the deployment of the original unit in 1900. Pennants in general are things to follow in battle. Historically, they would be the rally point for units on the field. Typically, as we become more and more technologically advanced, they become more a representation of what they were, but they are still important to the regiment as the regimental symbol. When World War I broke out, the Strathconas were a part of the permanent militia and therefore were part of the first contingent sent to England. They made it over to France as infantry initially, spent 8 months in the trenches, after which they were pulled back out of the trenches, converted back into cavalry, and then operated in a mounted infantry role throughout the rest of the war. Right up through and to the last 100 days. This particular display represents the amount of labor that would go into maintaining a horse. Combing it daily, feeding it, cleaning up behind it, and just generally keeping it healthy. It's a very labor-intensive activity that becomes part of the culture of the regiment, and in the early history, this was part of the culture of the regiment, maintaining the horses. This is the diorama depicting the Victoria Cross awarded to Lieutenant Harvey at Guyan Corps in 1917. He dashed forward when his men came under machine gun fire, leapt over a 3-strand barbed wire fence, attacked the machine gun with his pistol, shot the machine gunner, and then captured the rest of the machine gun crew. For that, he was awarded the Victoria Cross. This is a very rare, it's a representation of a very rare World War II model Sherman tank. With the very short gun barrel on it. It's the kind of tank that we took to battle right through from the start to the end of World War II. Outgunned, out-armored. This is the model of tank that the guys made it work with despite the disadvantages. All right, so we stand in front of the Cold War display. This is a brand new display to the gallery. It talks about that period from the late 50s through to 1990, where we were engaged in a war of economic attrition with the East. Well, the Strathconas had multiple roles through the Cold War. Initially, we were a tank unit. There was a re-rolling of armor in the mid-70s to more of a reconnaissance role. Ultimately, we wound up at the end of the Cold War again as a tank unit. So we stand in front of the memorial wall in which all of the honor roll for the Strathconas from South Africa all the way through to Afghanistan, the names are represented. The honor roll is those that died in combat. So it's a fairly major project involving a large amount of research, because when we put it up, we want it to be right, and it will be. It'll be absolutely 100% perfect. So that's our synopsis on the Strathcona Gallery here at the Military Museums. You're welcome to come down and join us and see the new displays.